Hello and welcome to Elevate 2020, the remote edition. My name is Kevin Ridley, and today we'll be covering the topic using the PFC Resize service without the PFC. First, a quick disclaimer. I'll give everyone a few seconds to read that. And we'll move on to our session agenda. First, we'll do a quick PFC background discussion. You won't need to know anything about the PFC to be able to use this once we show you how to do it. And then we'll show you which objects you'll need from the PFC and how to modify those objects to be used outside of the PFC. Next, we'll show you how to set up code in your ancestor window to enable the service and use it, and then the code to call it in your descendant windows. And next we'll show you some options for resizing objects, and then we'll do a demo that covers everything. And last, we'll have time for Q&A. Not sure how they're going to do this. I guess they're going to let us know after. I'm guessing what we'll probably do is have people submit questions and then follow up afterwards with answers. Okay, let's get started. As I mentioned, my name is Kevin Ridley. There you'll see my LinkedIn profile. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me if you need to reach me. I don't use Twitter. And my Facebook profile is there as well. So some of my key skills, obviously Power Builder. I've got over 20 years in Power Builder. Power Server, EA Server, some of you diehard folks, Active Directory, SQL, web services, both REST and SOAP, OAuth, and Java messaging. Some of my recent projects, this year I did an integration, Power Builder and Power Server apps with a Populi web service, REST API using HTTP client. Also this year did a project where replaced the database user ID and password authentication with Active Directory, and that was for a Power Builder application. And in 2019 I did an integration of Salesforce. That was REST API using both the HTTP client and OAuth client. And in 2018 I did something very similar with Microsoft Dynamics using their REST API with the HTTP client and also OAuth client. My company is Aomega Solutions LLC. It's my own company, and I do both contract and independent short-term project work. So again, if you need to reach me, you can go back to the other page with my LinkedIn profile, send me a LinkedIn message, and I'll get back to you. So even though you don't need to know what the PFC is in order to use this service, we're going to give you a little background on it anyway. What is the PFC? It stands for Power Builder Foundation Classes. It is a service-based class library or architecture consisting of 10 pibbles, and they're divided into 2 layers. There's a PFC layer, which is 5 pibbles, and there's another 5 pibbles that are PFE layer. All the code resides in the PFC layer, and then the PFE layer, all the objects are inherited from the PFC objects. So there's a 1-for-1 in each pibble. These were written by the best of the best guys at PowerSoft. Hopefully everybody remembers PowerSoft is the one that created Power Builder back in the day. And these were their top guys that created this class library. So it was all the way back in version 5 when they first put this out, and it's since been migrated up and eventually moved to open source. And it's pretty much mostly maintained by Bruce these days, so definitely thank you to Bruce for all he does with that. One thing about the PFC is it's very tightly coupled. So they have their own windows, data windows, pretty much every object, even command buttons and such. And you basically either use the entire PFC libraries or you don't use them at all. So we're going to show you how to break out just this service. Here's where you get the libraries. Find them at GitHub. Next, we'll show you the objects that you need to use, and there's only 2 of those. So they're both from the PFC WNSRV Pibble, and that's known as the PFC WinServe, the Windows Services Pibble. And the 2 objects are PFC NCST Resize and PFC NCST Resize Attrib. And so the second one, the Resize Attrib, is basically just a bunch of attributes in one non-visual object that you use with the service. So you have a couple of options on how you're going to do the changes here that we need to make. You can either export and then edit the source file, or you can edit source directly. Another thing you can do is actually you can pull it up in, say, like the PFC demo app and do your changes there and do a save as. And I'll show you how to do both in the demo. So what we're going to do is change the inheritance in the non-visual objects, and we'll rename them just to make it easier for us. Now when we rename them, you can rename them to anything you want to. I've chosen to use Resize Service and Resize Attrib. Just makes it simpler in my mind anyway. And then once you do that, you're fully decoupled from the PFC, and you can use these objects independently. So first we'll show you how to do the edit source. So the first object you're going to go into is the Resize attribute. And you're going to take what's on the left here and just change it to what's on the right. So basically we're just going to change the name on this. So you can either go through and do a replace all, or you can just type in here as I've shown here. So you're just going to change the name from PFC NC Resize attribute to Resize attribute. And so there's 2 more spots you need to do that in. Same thing, we're just going to change the name from PFC NCST Resize Attrib to Resize Attrib, or whatever you decide to call it. Next, we're going to move on to the actual service itself, and that resides in the object PFC NCST Resize. So again, we're going to go through, and again, you can do a global replace, find replace, or you can just go in and type the objects. We're going to change the inheritance. That's one thing I forgot in the other object. So you'll see on the left it's inherited from base, and on the right we're just making it to non-visual object. So and same with the other, the Resize attribute. So if I go back, I'll show you that. Right, so this was inherited from NCST base attrib, and this we're going to make non-visual object. And also over here, same thing, going from NCST base attrib to non-visual. Okay, and then there's a couple instances of the instance variable, which is the attribute, the Resize attribute that we just changed in the prior step. And since we changed the name, you need to change it in the instance variable. You'll see on the left it's NCST Resize attribute, and on the right it's Resize attribute. Okay. And that this note about the other variable being obsolete, you don't have to do anything with it. You still need to change the name of it or it won't compile. So we're going to change it again from NCST Resize attrib to Resize attrib. So like I said, you can do a find replace in your edit source. You also do a save as. But either way, you're going to have to change the inheritance on it. So at some point, you're going to have to go in and do an edit source. Okay, so let's get into the ancestor window code. So if you don't already have an ancestor window, you can create something like wbase, which will inherit the rest of your windows that you want to resize from. On it, you're going to put an instance variable. I usually make it protected. You don't have to. You can make it public if you want. It's Resize Service, and inv resize is the name. Then you're going to create a function called ofsetResize, and it'll take Boolean as an argument. And basically, if we pass in true, we're going to create the service, and then we're going to do this ofsetOriginalSize, which is a function on the service. We're going to pass in the current width and height. Otherwise, if we're passing in false, we're going to destroy the service. I'm going to go to the events. So the only thing we have to change is in the resize event. I always like to do a check if is valid before I call anything on a non-visual object. So anyways, we're going to say if it's valid, then we're going to trigger the event PFC Resize. We're going to pass the same arguments that the resize event takes, which is size type, new width, and new height. And in the close event, I always like to clean up. If it's still there, let's destroy it. Okay, now we're going to get into the Resize Options. So this is right in the Resize attribute, it's Resize Service, I'm sorry, has these constants, and they represent the different ways you can resize objects. I'm not going to go through all of them. We'll do some of them in the demo. Okay, next is the code to use the service in your descendant window. I usually like to do it in the open event. So we'll call the ofsetResize and set it to true. And then after that, we're going to do the ofsetMinSize to the current width and height. And you can play around with that a little bit if you want. Basically what that does is it says when you're resizing down, don't resize if it gets smaller than whatever size you set there. And then we're going to register the objects that we want to resize. Now in the test window I'm going to show you in the demo, I've got a couple of data windows, a few command buttons, a group box, and we'll get into the values. But basically every object that you want resized other than the window itself, you're going to register. Okay, so let's get into the demo. Okay, so I've already downloaded the PFC libraries, and one of the things you get with the PFC library is a couple of demo apps. One of them is the Pete demo app, and it comes with the target and everything when you download. So all you have to do is add the target to your workspace, and you've got everything you need to run the demo app. So you'll notice there's this Pete pibble. That's not part of the PFC. That's just an independent pibble and just for this demo app. Then you'll see the 5 PFE pibbles and then your 5 PFC pibbles. So I should have mentioned before that the PFE layer is completely empty. All the objects are empty. They're just inherited from the PFC objects. What it's for is for making extensions to the PFC. So if you have something that you like in the PFC but it's not quite meeting your needs and you need it to do something more or potentially less, you can make a change, but you make it at the PFE layer, PFE level, and then you save and you use your PFE objects. All right, so let's go to the PFC WinServe pibble. We'll find our 2 objects that we were looking for here. Here's the Resize Service, and here's the attribute. First, we're going to open the attribute. And we're just going to, I'll show you the only events are the constructor and destructor, which are empty. And there's some message boxes which are inherited from an object that we're not going to use because it's inherited from this base and CST base attribute. So we won't have those when we change the inheritance. So here's really everything in the object is instance variables. and you'll see them here. So right now we're just going to do a save as, and we're going to get rid of all this stuff, PFC prefix, and we're just going to call it N resize attribute. We'll save it. And here it is. We'll also go in and do the service. And you'll see there's a whole bunch of functions here that we're actually going to use, except for the off message box, of course. And we're just going to save as. I'm just going to call it N resize. We're going to add underscore service at the end, so I know it's a service when I use it in other applications. Okay, and now you'll see both objects here. We have the service and the attribute. Let's fix the attribute first. We're going to change the inheritance on it. Go to edit source. And we're going to change this to non-visual object. And I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to change it here also. And those are the only two spots you need to change inheritance on. We're going to save this. And so now if we go in there, there won't be any functions because we changed the inheritance. It's just from a standard non-visual object now. Okay, so now we're going to change the service. Oops, I'm sorry, we want to edit source on it. And instead of N base, we're going to again go non-visual object. Two places you need to change that. And we're also going to change all the occurrences of the NCST resize attribute. So we're going to do edit. Replace as N CST resize, and hopefully I'll spell it right. Attribute. Change that to N resize attribute. Replace all, and we'll save it. And there we go. And that's all we needed to do for that. Now what you'll do is export these guys, the two objects that we just created, and put them wherever you know to find them. I'm not going to do that because I've already done that. And now I'm going to go into my own app here. Set its current target. So we'll open that and you'll see I have those objects. So normally we just come in here and import those two objects. So find them wherever you exported them to. And you want to import the resize attribute first, and then the service itself, because the service has the resize attribute as an instance variable. Okay. You'll also see here, I'm not going to go into these. I have the DW Resize Service, the data window service, and also it has its own data window resize attribute. I'm just going to post this code on Code Exchange. It's not part of this demo, but that'll work for if you want to resize columns and such in the data window. All right. So now let's take a look at the code. If we look at WBase, I already have it open. Okay, let's try that again. Alright, here's our OFSIT resize. And it's simple, as we mentioned before. And then in the events, in the close, we're just going to destroy it. And in the resize, we're going to trigger the PFC resize event on the service. And like I said, this size type, new width and new height are already arguments in the resize event, so nothing special there. You're just passing the arguments that you're getting. Okay, let's get on to the code in the window, the descendant window. Okay, again, this is in the open event. We're just going to turn the service on, and you don't necessarily have to do this, but I usually like to do it so it doesn't resize smaller than the original size. And so it's not going to prevent the window itself from getting smaller, but it will stop resizing once it gets to that point. Okay, now I'm going to comment these out. We'll do individually to kind of show what they're doing here. So I have, if I take a look at my window here, I have a group box, I have DW upper, DW lower. On the side I have a side button called CB side, and then at the bottom I have CB bottom. Okay, so in the open event we're going to register those objects. The first thing I'm going to register is a DW upper, and then the second argument to that, you tell it what you want to register, the object here, and then how you want it to resize. So in this case I'm saying scale right. So let's check out that and see what it does. Okay, here's my window, and if I drag the corner here, you'll see, and it's not going to look pretty with the other stuff, but we'll put it all together at the end. So there's basically what it does. You'll see it goes to the right when the window drags to the right. Okay, now we saw that the side button was in the way, so let's take care of that next. So what I'm going to do is have that fixed to the right portion of the screen. So I'm going to say OF register CB side, and the good thing about this, if you use IntelliSense, you can just see if I use that because instead of using this, it's actually a number. But if you do INV resize, say dot, and you'll see all your different options. And I'm going to find fixed right, and there we go. All right, so let's save that, and we'll run it. So now when I do it, you'll see the button moves with it. And you see it overlays over the group box here because we didn't resize the group box yet. So next thing we'll do is the group box. So here we go. So with the group box, what we're going to do is scale to the right and the bottom. So let's see what that does. And I'll just move this over a little bit so it's easier to see. And there we go. Now you see the group box is moving with it. And you see it stops resizing when you get past the minimum that we had set. Okay, now why don't we put it all together? We've got the group box set, the CB side. Let's do the lower data window, and let's scale that to the right and the bottom. And that button on the bottom, if we don't change this, it's going to get overlaid by the data window when we scroll down. All right, I'm sorry, when we resize down. Let's save and run again, and we'll move it over here, and there we go. So you see everything working together. Both buttons are doing what they should, and both data windows are doing what they should. Now, I saw a question in the community forum one time. Somebody was asking about resizing two data windows, and what they were doing was scaling both to the right and bottom. So I'll show you what that does. So once we start resizing, you'll see the top one goes into the bottom one. And you don't want that. If I had data in there, it'd be easier to see what was going on. So the solution to that is to take your top one, and you only want to scale to the right. Okay, we'll show that one more time. And there we go. Top one is scaling just to the right, it's keeping the same height. And then the bottom one is scaling to the right and the bottom. And along with the group box is doing right and bottom as well. Alright, so that is the Resize service. Hope you liked it. If you have any questions, you can either hit me up on LinkedIn, or we're going to go back to here. And we'll do, like I mentioned, the data window service, Resize service is optional. It's not part of this demo, but I am going to put the code out on Code Exchange. These are the two objects you need: the PFC and CST DW serve resize and the DW serve resize attribute. They reside in the PFC DW serve pebble. And like I said, it's almost the same process to decouple those from the PFC. So if you want to resize within your data windows as well as your windows, you can play around with that. The data windows service allows you to do percentage. So you can do columns at different percentages if you want, things like that. And here are some of the links provided by Appeon. And thank you, everyone, and everyone stay safe.